Hello people, today I'm going to be making a video on effort to reward ratio, and I think this is a very important subject to address at most times with regards to gardening, but particularly with what's happening at the moment, it's very important indeed. So effort to reward ratio, basically what that means is how much effort you're going to put into something in order to get what you're going to get, okay? And how you budget your space, how you budget your time, your money, your efforts, whatever, to get what you want and what will serve you the best. So I think it's very worthy of consideration. Now, if one starts thinking of something like kale, chard or spinach, okay, now these are three, in my opinion, of the best things to grow, okay, because they are recurring, perpetual, cut and come again crops, okay? So in that space that plant is occupying, you can continue to get produce from that for quite a long season, okay? That's quite a bang for your buck crop. However, if you use that same space for something such as strawberries, of which are incredibly delicious, we all know this, you're going to get your one flourish from that particular space, get your strawberries, as delicious as they are, then they're finished for another year or so, yes? You get where I'm coming from, okay? So, with regards to how you're going to allocate your space and efforts and time, etc., is well and truly up to you. But at the moment, where food security is very much at the forefront of people's minds, you know, thinking and just scanning around of how you're going to place everything is very worthy of consideration. Now, if you take things like my lovely peach tree, which many of you are aware I love talking about so much, okay, now with regards to growing exotics, okay, peaches can be one of the best exotics to grow here in the UK if growing exotics floats your boat, simply because they're fully hardy here in the UK. Yes, you've got to avoid peach leaf curl, but you can get a lovely crop from a peach or a nectarine tree with not too much effort, okay? Whereas if you're thinking of growing something like mangoes, for example, or you try to grow coconuts, you will find that you will have to put a lot more effort in to get a crop. And once again, it's maximum reward effort for bang for your buck and where you're going to allocate your resources. Of course, if you really want to get into growing exotics, and it's a great thing, you know, it's so satisfying when you manage to, you know, get a good crop. I remember seeing a video on YouTube where a chap called Ian, you know, managed to grow a mango here in the UK. Absolutely brilliant and really inspiring stuff. But, you know, producing apples will always be much easier because growing things that suit the climate where you live is generally the best thing to do in return for getting the most out of your space. So if you take a look down here, you see my potatoes I've got growing in these containers here. So all being well, I'm going to get really nice crops of potatoes in them buckets. And then what I can do when the crop has come, I can then put something else in these buckets. Whereas once again, for example, this absolutely beautiful nectarine tree will be taking up this bucket here, pot, container, whatever you want to call it. And that's, you know, for one flourish of nectarines per year. So a classic example of, you know, a lot of effort for a crop would be something like watermelons. Okay, now many of you are aware a few years ago I managed to grow watermelons with success here, and the satisfaction was immense, and I've not been able to duplicate that since. But you know, I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so glad that I've got video evidence of it on YouTube so that people are aware that it can indeed be done. But at the same time, the effort for the crop that I got, you know, and the space it took up for so long, you know, if that was set with an if that area was set up with something like you know, radishes or turnips or something like that, spring onions, you know, salad leaves, just how much more crop from that particular area I would have got. Now, I absolutely love my soft fruit bed, but once again, the story is the same here with regards to this. If you think about it, you know, so I've got gooseberries in here, I've got raspberries, and I've got this cherry tree as well. And I've also got my container grown blueberries, gooseberries. There it all is. But imagine it if this area was a vegetable patch and how I could have crop rotation going on here. it would just be absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it? The amount of produce that you could get from this area. However, something like this is an interesting thing. I'm sure many of you are aware already. If you see this currant bush, which could either be a red or a black currant, I think it's a black currant, but red currants were actually used as a citrus substitute during World War II, and obviously it was much harder for citrus to get here. So anyway, that little side note there, you're getting the idea of what I'm speaking of, and with everything happening, you may wish to consider where you're putting your efforts at this particular time. So many people steer away from growing things like potatoes, particularly if they've got a small garden, because they think, well, take up a lot of space for what you get for a crop, that, you can actually buy the potatoes relatively cheap. But listen to this, things have changed, haven't they? There was that news report yesterday, the farmers saying that, had an increased demand for potatoes. Okay, a potato is very much a staple in the the UK diet, and probably the American diet as well, I would imagine. In Asian countries, something like rice will be a staple, won't it? So I often think that another classic example would be onions. You can buy a bag of onions so cheap, but are all these things going to be readily available so cheap in the future? Or is everything going to change? Now, growing for taste and growing for cheapness, growing to save money are all separate subjects for, separate videos probably. But I would say that, if you want a good crop, good economic gardening, okay, it might not be glamorous, but, if you get your staples, get your bases covered, so potatoes, chard, spinach, kale, well, there you go. There's quite a lot there, isn't there? Turnips, beetroot, stuff that is less likely to fail than something more exotic, not suited to the climate. So if you take this Jubilee plum, all being well, this is going to be loaded with fruit. You think how many plums you could potentially get from that. Now, one exception to the exotics, if you will, with regards to, high productivity could be something like a grape, okay? Because they're fully hardy here in the UK, and yet they've still got that beautiful sort of exotic sort of lure to them, if you will, and they can crop very, very heavily here indeed. So there you go, a bit of a chat about effort to reward analysis regarding gardening. I think you understand where I'm coming from, and everything is getting quite reinforced at the moment, isn't it? So if you like my work, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and you can always check me out on Dan_Home Gardens on Instagram. And I'm sorry if I've not replied to your comments of late. Been quite busy with quite a few things, and I'm trying to put a video up every day during this sort of a period of time to give people something to hopefully at the very least be mildly entertained by. See you next time.